Don't bother coming down to the lobby. The car already left. You're not part of this trip anymore. That was the message. 6:52 in the morning. I was standing in front of the Ritz-Carlton in Half Moon Bay with a garment bag over my shoulder and a coffee I hadn't even taken a sip of yet, watching the valet pull away the SUV I had reserved 3 weeks earlier. The SUV I had paid $4,200 to rent for the long weekend. The SUV that was supposed to take all of us up the coast for my younger sister's engagement celebration. My mother sent it, followed by a second one 2 seconds later. We need space. Don't make a scene. I didn't make a scene. I didn't make a scene. I never made a scene. That was the whole problem, actually, and it took me 31 years and one humiliating Friday morning in a hotel driveway to figure that out. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My name is Lenore. I'm 31. I work as a hospital systems consultant. Basically, I get hired by big medical networks to fix the back-end software when their billing infrastructure goes sideways, which it always does. I'm good at it. I make a lot of money doing it. I bought my first condo at 26. I paid off my student loans by 28. And from the time I was about 23, I had been quietly funding my family's life in ways I didn't even bother to keep track of. Because I thought that's what you did when you were the one who made it out. My younger sister, Tamsin, is 26. She's the one getting married. The fiancé's name is Brigham, and yes, he's exactly what you're imagining. He sells some kind of cryptocurrency course online, and he wears those slim wool blazers with sneakers, and he calls everyone brother. I had paid for the engagement party at the Ritz. I had paid for the rehearsal dinner that was scheduled for Saturday. I put down the deposit on the wedding venue in Sonoma. I had even bought Tamsin's dress because my mother called me one Tuesday afternoon crying about how the family couldn't afford the kind of dress Tamsin deserves, and I, being the family ATM I had trained everyone to expect, said, sure, I'll handle it. $12,000. A Monique Loyer off the rack with alterations. So when my mother told me to stay in the lobby, that I wasn't part of the trip anymore, I'll be honest with you, for about 30 seconds my brain just refused. It physically would not let me process what those words meant. I read the text 3 times. Then I called her, straight to voicemail. I called my dad, voicemail. I called Tamsin, voicemail. I called Brigham, which I would never normally do, and that prick actually picked up, took one breath, and hung up on me. I stood there in that driveway for I don't know how long. The valet kept glancing at me like he wanted to ask if I needed help, but didn't know how to phrase it. There was a fog rolling in off the ocean. My coffee got cold, and I started doing the thing I always do when something terrible happens, which is try to figure out what I did wrong. Did I say something at dinner last night? I'd had 2 glasses of wine and mostly listened. Did I dress wrong? I had on a navy blazer and jeans. Did I correct Brigham about something? Maybe he'd said something about hospital margins being a scam, and I might have very gently said it was more complicated than that. It took me about an hour, sitting on a bench by the koi pond at the Ritz, before another text came in. This one, from my father. Your mother and I have decided this weekend should be just for blood family. Tamsin needs to focus. We'll talk when you're back in the city. Just for blood family. I am his daughter. I am her daughter. I have a birth certificate. I have baby photos. I have a scar on my left knee from when my dad pushed me on a bike when I was 6 and I went face first into a fence. But I knew what he meant. Or I thought I knew. I thought he meant me and Tamsin have different energies. You know how she gets before big events. The usual passive-aggressive stuff my dad had been mumbling for 2 decades. I assumed it was about Tamsin being stressed and not wanting her boring older sister around to take attention. That's what I assumed for the next 11 hours. While I drove my own car back to San Francisco, while I sat in my condo eating reheated noodles in my engagement party outfit, while I scrolled Instagram and watched my own family, my mother, my father, my sister, Brigham's parents, 2 of my cousins, toast champagne in a vineyard I had paid for. Tamsin tagged it, surrounded by the people who matter most. Shh. I was not in the photo. I was not in the photo. I was not even on the guest list apparently anymore. That's what I assumed. Right up until 11:37 p.m. when I got an email from a bank I had never opened an account with, congratulating me on my second mortgage. Let me tell you exactly what that email said because I have it memorized. Dear Ms. Lenore Whitfield Krause, congratulations. Your refinance application for the property at 8842 Coral Pines Drive, Daly City, CA has been approved. Total cash out $312,000. Funds will be dispersed to the account on file within 48 hours. I do not own a property at 8842 Coral Pines Drive. I have never been to Daly City except to drive through it on the way to the airport. I had not applied for a refinance. I had not signed anything. I did not have a second mortgage to refinance. But somebody named Lenore Whitfield Krause did. I sat up. I put my noodles down. I opened my laptop and I went into my credit monitoring app, which I had had on the lowest tier alert setting for years because I was busy and I trusted my family and I had never, not once, been given a reason to think anyone in my life would do something like this. There were 9 accounts I didn't recognize, 2 auto loans, a home equity line, 4 credit cards, 3 of them maxed, a personal loan from a credit union in Reno, and the mortgage on the Daly City house, which it turned out had been opened 22 months ago, and which I had apparently been paying through automatic ACH withdrawals from an account I'd assumed was just funding my mom's household stuff the way it had been since I was 24. 22 months. Almost 2 years. They had been doing this for almost 2 years, and I hadn't noticed because the withdrawals were spread across 4 accounts and labeled things like Mom Household and Fam Support and T-Weddin' Fun, and I had set them up to just go because I made enough that I genuinely did not check. I want to say something here because I know I've read the comments people leave on stories like mine. I know how this lands. People are going to say, how did you not notice? How does anyone not notice $312,000 of debt in their name? How are you that stupid? Here's how. When you grow up the way I grew up, and I'll get to that, you don't trust your own perceptions. You trust the perceptions of the people who raised you. My mother told me for 31 years that she was the only one who could be trusted with money in our family, that my dad was hopeless with it, that I was blessed but absent-minded, that I should let her handle the household accounts because I was busy with work. I had given her power of attorney over 2 of my accounts when I was 24 because she said it would help her pay my dad's medical bills when his back surgery came up. The medical bills, of course, never came. The power of attorney never got revoked. I just forgot about it. You don't notice because you don't look. And you don't look because the people who taught you how to look told you you didn't have to. I sat at my kitchen island until 4 a.m. printing out statements. I made a folder. I labeled it. I'm a systems person. This is what I do. By dawn, I had the full picture, or close to it, and the full picture was worse than I had let myself imagine in the first hour. The Daly City house wasn't theirs. It was Brigham's. They had bought him a house with a mortgage in my name 2 years ago when he and Tamsin had only been dating for 6 months. The auto loans were for my mother's Lexus and my father's truck, both of which they had told me they got a great deal on, and which I had assumed meant they'd finance them like normal people. The credit cards, and this is the part that still makes my hands cold, were being used at salons, at restaurants, at a country club in Burlingame, at a wine club, and, weirdly, at a children's clothing store. Tamsin doesn't have children. None of my cousins close enough to matter have children. I still don't know who the children's clothes were for. I have a guess, but I don't want to write it down yet. The personal loan from the credit union in Reno was $48,000. The notation on it said, Brigham Wedding, Honeymoon and Reserve. Honeymoon and Reserve. They had taken out a personal loan in my name to pay for the honeymoon of the wedding I was already paying for. They had double-billed me to my own family. I want to describe what it felt like, but I'm not sure I can. It wasn't anger, not yet. Anger came later. It was more like the floor of my brain just dropping out. Every memory I had, every birthday, every Christmas, every "we love you, Lenny, you're so generous," was getting reframed in real time. My mom's tears at Easter when she said she was so proud of me. My dad's hand on my shoulder at my college graduation. Tamsin asking if she could borrow my Amex just for the deposit. All of it. All of it was a transaction I hadn't been told I was funding. I put the printouts down. I went to my bathroom. I threw up, and then, And this is the part where I owe you the truth. Then I sat back down on the bathroom floor and I started laughing. Not a healthy laugh. A weird, hollow who am I laugh. Because all I could think was, the text. The text from my mother in the driveway. We need space. Don't make a scene. She wasn't worried I was going to embarrass Tamsin at the engagement party. She was worried I was going to find out. The whole exclusion was a distraction. They needed me out of the weekend because the next loan disbursement, the $312,000, was set to hit on Monday, and they were planning to use it to pay Brigham's parents back because Brigham's parents had figured out the Daly City house wasn't actually his, and there had been some kind of conversation, and the entire wedding was about to fall apart. And the only way to keep it from falling apart was to drain my equity one more time and get the in-laws off Brigham's back before Saturday's rehearsal dinner, which I was also paying for. I want to tell you that I sprang into action. I want to tell you I called a lawyer at 4:30 a.m. and started a war. But the truth is, I lay on the bathroom floor and cried for about an hour and a half. I cried about my dog, who I'd had to put down 2 years ago. I cried about a boyfriend in college who I had loved and let my mother run off because he wasn't ambitious. I cried about my grandmother, my mom's mother, who had died when I was 24, and who, in the last week of her life, had held my hand in the hospice and said something I had never understood until that night. She had said, "Lenny, your mother has a sickness, don't let her give it to you." I had thought she meant depression or her drinking. I had cried at that bedside and promised her I would take care of Mom. I would take care of all of them, because that was what she wanted, right? That was not what she had wanted. I understood it now, on my bathroom floor at 5 a.m., the way you understand things you've been refusing to understand for years. By 6 a.m., I was in the shower. By 7, I was dressed. By 8, I had a lawyer on the phone, not my regular lawyer, but a fraud specialist named Annika Eldrith Vega out of Oakland who had been recommended by a colleague at the hospital network. I had called her once before about a HIPAA thing. She remembered me. I told her in my flattest professional voice what I had found. She said one word, which was, "Don't." "Don't what?" I said. "Don't talk to any of them today. Don't go to the rehearsal dinner. Don't pick up the phone. Send everything to me by 10 a.m., and I will be in your conference room at 3. I sent her everything. She came to my conference room at 3 with a paralegal, and we sat there for 6 hours. The first thing she did was put a freeze on every account I had, including the ones my mother had power of attorney over. She filed an emergency revocation. She filed a fraud affidavit with each of the 9 institutions. She filed a police report with San Francisco PD and a separate one with the Daly City PD because the property was there. She contacted the bank that was about to disburse the $312,000 on Monday and put a hold on it pending a fraud investigation, which, she explained to me with the very faintest smile, would also automatically alert the title company, the underwriter, the in-laws who had co-signed, and every credit bureau in the country. Within 48 hours, the Daly City house would be in legal limbo. The auto loans would be flagged, the credit cards would be frozen, and every single one of those ACH withdrawals coming out of my checking accounts stopped. As of Friday night. This was Friday night. The rehearsal dinner was Saturday at 6 p.m. The wedding was Sunday at 4. Annika asked me if I wanted to call my mother. She said it gently. She said sometimes people want one conversation just to have it on the record. She would even let me record it through a service her firm used. I thought about it for a long time. I thought about all the years. I thought about Thompson's wedding dress, hanging in some hotel room in Sonoma. 12 grand of silk. I thought about my dad's truck, parked in front of his house, financed in my name. I thought about Brigham, brothering his way through life on my equity. I told Annika no, I didn't want a conversation. I wanted them to find out the way I had found out, alone, at night, with no one to call. I went home. I slept for 14 hours. I had not slept 14 hours since I was a teenager. I want to tell you what happened Saturday because the comments on stories like this always say the same thing. I would have canceled everything mid-flight. I would have made them stranded. I would have been more savage, and I want you to know that I heard you. The version of you who has watched these videos before, and I did do something, but I want to be honest about why. I did not cancel the rehearsal dinner. I let it happen. I let all of it happen. The rehearsal dinner went off Saturday at 6 p.m. at a private vineyard restaurant in Sonoma, the one I had put a $22,000 deposit on. The deposit had cleared 2 weeks before. There was nothing to cancel. The food was paid for. The wine was paid for. My family ate and drank and toasted Brigham and his parents. My mother gave a speech, I'm told, about the importance of family loyalty. My father cried. Tamsin and Brigham slow danced to a Frank Sinatra song. Brigham's parents, who, again, were sitting on a ticking time bomb of about to find out their son's house wasn't actually paid for, smiled and nodded. I know all of this because my cousin Marisol, the one cousin who has always been kind to me, the one who texted me on my birthday last year when no one else did, was there, and she was the one who, around 9 p.m., when Brigham's father stepped outside to take a call, watched his face change, watched him come back inside, watched him pull Brigham into the back hallway by the kitchen and have a conversation that, according to two of the waiters who told her later, involved the phrase, "What do you mean the loan was denied?" and the phrase, "In whose name?" The wedding the next day did not happen. I'm going to say that one more time so it sits right. The wedding the next day did not happen. By 7 a.m. Sunday morning, Brigham's parents had pulled their funding for the second half of the venue, the band, and the photographer. By 9 a.m., Brigham had moved his stuff out of the hotel suite. By 11 a.m., Tamsin was screaming in the bridal cottage. By 1 p.m., and I have this on Marisol's authority because she stayed all weekend, my mother was on the phone with me leaving voicemail after voicemail, the first one weepy, the second one furious, the third one threatening, the fourth one weepy again, the fifth one offering to explain everything if I would just please call her back. The sixth one was just my dad, very quiet, saying, "Lenore, what did you do?" What did I do? I had not done anything yet, technically. The fraud investigation was the bank's investigation. The frozen accounts were the bank's freezes. The seized power of attorney was a court matter. I had simply stopped lying to myself, and the rest of it had unfolded on its own, the way a building falls down once you stop holding it up with your shoulders. Annika told me the police interview would come the following Tuesday. She told me it would be hard. She told me the DA in San Mateo County had already reviewed the file and was very interested. She told me to bring tissues. I did not need them. I sat in that interview room for 4 hours and I told a detective named Esperanza Quillmatson everything I knew, in chronological order, with documents tabbed and labeled. And at the end of it, she looked at me and said, "Ms. Mustantids, Whitfield Krause, in my 15 years doing this, I have never had a victim hand me a case this clean." I cried then. Not for my parents, for my grandmother. Because I finally understood what she had meant. The charges came down 6 weeks later. My mother was charged with 11 counts of identity theft, 2 counts of wire fraud, 1 count of mortgage fraud, and 1 count of elder abuse. That last one because she had also, it turned out, drained my grandmother's small estate before it had been finalized, money that was supposed to come to me. My father was charged as a co-conspirator on most of the counts. Brigham was charged separately for the Daly City property. Tamsin was not charged. Tamsin, it turned out, had been told the whole time that I had agreed to all of it. Tamsin was, in some ways, the second victim. I want to say that clearly because I know she's the easiest one to hate. She did call me, eventually. About 4 months after the wedding that wasn't, she had moved out of my parents' house. She was working as a receptionist at a dental office in Vallejo. She had cut off Brigham, who by then was in pre-trial confinement for something unrelated. She was 26 years old and she had no idea how to pay rent. She called me. And what she said was, I didn't know. I believed her. I still do. But I didn't take her back. And I want to tell you why. Because this is the part the comment section always wants. People always want the big reunion. The hallmark moment. And we became closer than ever. That's not what happened. What I said to Tamsin was this. I said, I believe you didn't know, and I'm sorry you grew up in that house with me, and I'm not your mother, and I'm not going to be. You're an adult now, go be one, and I hung up. She has texted me twice since then, once on my birthday last year and once at Christmas. I have not replied. I might someday. I don't know yet. My parents are awaiting trial. My mother's lawyer keeps trying to push it back. Anika says it'll likely be next spring. I will testify. I will not flinch. I sold my condo in San Francisco. I moved to a small place outside Asheville, North Carolina, where I have an aunt, my dad's sister, the one my mother had always told me was crazy and estranged for a reason, which it turned out meant saw through your mother in 1992 and refused to play along. Her name is Whitney. She is the most normal person I have ever met. She bakes bread. She has 2 retrievers. She did not ask me a single question about money for the first 9 months I lived here. When I finally tried to thank her, she said, "Honey, you don't owe anybody anything for being decent to you." That was the lie. That was the lie. That's the line that I want to leave you with if you've made it this far. That was the lie. The lie was not that my family loved me. The lie was that love came with an invoice. The lie was that being the strong one meant being the funded one. The lie was that blood family meant anything at all when the blood family in question was sucking years out of vein at a time. I am 33 now. I work remotely for a smaller hospital network out of Charlotte. I make less money. I keep almost all of it. I have a savings account my mother does not know about and could not touch if she did. I have a therapist named Doreen who has, gently, over 2 years, helped me understand that the version of me who paid for that wedding was not stupid and was not weak and was not deserving of what happened. She was a child who had grown up in a house that taught her that her worth was in her wallet, and she had become an adult who had been waiting, without knowing it, for someone to tell her she was loved for any other reason. Nobody in that family was ever going to tell her that. So I told myself. It took a long time. It is still taking a long time. But I want to tell anyone watching this, anyone who has gotten one of those texts, the "don't come," the "you're not part of this," the "we need space," I want to tell you that the text is not the bad news. The text is the good news. The text is the moment your real life starts. The bad news happened years before the text, in slow motion, while you weren't looking. The text is just the day the lights came on. I drove up to my grandmother's grave last fall. She's buried in a small cemetery in eastern Oregon, where she grew up. I had not been since the funeral. I brought her a card I had written and a small stone I had picked up from the creek behind Whitney's house and a copy of the police report. I put all 3 of them on the grass at the foot of her stone. I sat there for a while. I told her I had finally heard her. I told her I was sorry it had taken me so long. I told her I was okay now, or I was getting okay, which was the same thing in slower handwriting. The wind came up off the hills. I stayed until the sun got low. I did not cry. I had done all my crying already. On my way back to the car, I passed a young woman, maybe 25, sitting at another grave a few rows over. She had her face in her hands. I almost stopped. I almost said something. I almost told her, I don't know, something. Whatever the version of that was, the lie would have been for her. But I didn't. It wasn't my place. She'll find it on her own. The way I did. The way you do. I just got in my car and I drove home, which is a word I get to use now. Finally, without it costing me anything. I think about that morning in the Half Moon Bay driveway more often than I'd like to admit. Not the way you replay a wound, but the way you study a map after you've already arrived somewhere new. Because the truth I keep coming back to is this. Nothing that happened to me happened by accident. Every piece of it had a cause, and most of those causes were sitting at my own kitchen table for 30 years. My mother didn't wake up one Tuesday and decide to take out a mortgage in my name. She built toward it. Slowly, with every "just this once," every power of attorney, every tear-soaked phone call about my dad's back. And I built toward it too, with every yes I gave when I meant no, every silence I offered when I should have asked a question, every account I let her touch, because the alternative was a fight I didn't have the stomach for. The $312,000 didn't come out of nowhere. It came out of 1,000 small moments where I chose comfort over clarity, and she learned year by year that there was no floor. So, she kept digging. That's the part I had to make peace with. Not just that they did it, but that I had been part of how they got away with it for so long. There is a kind of decency that's actually cowardice in a costume, and I'd been wearing that costume since I was a teenager. I called it being a good daughter. I called it being generous. I called it not making a scene. None of those names were honest. The thing nobody tells you about getting your life back is that it doesn't feel like victory. It feels like grief. I lost a family that day, even though that family had stopped existing a long time before I noticed. Thompson is not in my life. My parents are awaiting trial. The condo is gone. The city is gone. The version of me who walked into that hotel driveway with a cup of coffee and a garment bag is gone too, and I do not miss her exactly, but I owe her something. I owe her an apology for not protecting her sooner. What I learned, sitting on Whitney's porch that first summer in North Carolina, is that being kind and being a target are not the same thing. Even though the people who exploit you will work very hard to convince you they are, you can be generous and still ask where the money goes. You can love someone and still freeze the account. You can be the strong one without being the funded one. The people who told me otherwise were not teaching me how to love. They were teaching me how to disappear. So if you're sitting somewhere right now holding a phone that just buzzed with a message that doesn't make sense, pause. Look at the message. Look at the years behind it. Ask yourself what it is, really, that they're afraid you'll find out. The text is never the betrayal. The text is the receipt.